ce l'hai? Ah.
Quando parli?
Tu quanto ti fermi? Domani ti fermi?
No.
Vai via.
Domani c'è una frittata.
Ah, certo.
Matteo, scusa, allora per quanto riguarda le domande, allora tu dovresti dire all'inizio che chi volesse fare appunto delle domande, ci sono delle persone in sala che distribuiscono dei fogli.
Questo ho detto, l'ho capito.
Va bene? Però lo dovresti dire tu all'inizio,
Sì,
così.
sì.
Italiano? Si parla italiano?
Sì, sì. Con la traduzione. Noi ci abbiamo il nostro.
Sì, di per sé c'è anche di per sé c'è anche come si dice? Mi viene il pulpito, ma vabbè.
No, non c'è.
Il podio.
C'è il podio?
Sì, ci sta. Quindi, sì, no.
Ok, più dici, anche perché non è una relazione, quindi... Aiuto, cominciamo. Che dici? Cominciamo. A me è sempre piaciuto suonare il campanello, quindi... Dunque, anzitutto buongiorno a tutti, siamo molto contenti di avviare questa mattinata, anche questo primo panel, dopo la bellissima introduzione di ieri. Ringraziamo davvero le tante importanti parole. Il tema del nostro panel è una pace disarmata e disarmante. Come sappiamo, espressione usata del primo saluto dopo aver usato la prima parola pace. Papa Leone ha indicato anche la qualità di questa pace, disarmata e disarmante. E prima di dire due brevissime parole, alcune indicazioni di fondo che sono anche per tranquillizzare gli ascoltatori e per moderare i nostri speaker. Dunque, noi finiremo a 12:15. Ecco, può essere. Dovremmo. Ecco. Tutti i nostri oratori interverranno per 10 minuti, dopodiché io severamente suonerò il campanello o così, insomma, farò presente che andiamo un po' oltre, ma insomma... è possibile, dopo il giro di interventi, è possibile fare domande. Io ringrazio tutti quanti voi, ci sono moltissimi giovani, molte scuole e anche questo è davvero qualcosa di molto, ci riempie di soddisfazione e di speranza. Ci sono dei foglietti, alcuni che girano, quindi chi vuole intervenire si può dare il foglietto, dice il nome, eccetera, e poi dopo faremo le domande e anche a chi rivolge la sua domanda. Ecco, questo come introduzione. Gli interventi saranno in ordine alfabetico. Ora, siccome appunto i primi saranno gli ultimi, comincio io. E d'altra parte, ecco, ma no, io devo soltanto moderare, ma io voglio soltanto leggere due piccole citazioni. Una di Dietrich Bonhoeffer, un teologo evangelico tedesco, ucciso poche ore prima che il suo campo di detenzione venisse liberato, proprio poche ore prima, e che nel 1934, quindi soltanto un anno dopo l'ascesa al potere di Hitler, e ieri gli accenni che ha fatto a questo a riguardo il professor Riccardi sono stati molto illuminanti, quindi un anno dopo, e quindi solo 5 anni prima l'inizio della Seconda Guerra Mondiale. Diceva in un sermone queste parole: chi invoca la pace così che il mondo ascolti e sia obbligato ad ascoltare, perché temiamo l'ululato di rabbia delle potenze mondiali? Perché non sottraiamo loro il potere e lo restituiamo a Cristo? Oggi possiamo ancora farlo. L'ora incalza. Il mondo è armato fino ai denti e la diffidenza brilla terribile in ogni occhio. Alle fanfare di guerra si può dar fiato domani stesso. Che altro aspettiamo? Vogliamo divenire complici, come mai lo siamo stati prima? Vogliamo dire a questo mondo non una mezza parola, ma una parola intera, una parola coraggiosa. Vogliamo pregare che ci vengano date queste parole oggi stesso. Chissà se l'anno prossimo ci riuniremo ancora. E le altre brevi citazioni proprio sul disarmare è una sola di 60 anni, discorso moralissimo, pieno che per capire perdute e che se non facciamo la manutenzione degli organismi internazionali rischiamo di renderli inutili. Ed è pericolosissimo, perché se non ci sono gli organismi internazionali in grado di comporre i conflitti, c'è solo la logica della forza. Allora, 60 anni fa, non a caso era il 4 ottobre, proprio non a caso, disse queste parole e io finisco. Se volete essere fratelli, lasciate cadere le armi dalle vostre mani. Non si può amare con armi offensive in pugno. Le armi, ancora prima che produrre vittime e rovine, generano cattivi sogni, alimentano sentimenti cattivi, creano incubi, diffidenze e propositi tristi, esigono enormi spese, arrestano progetti di solidarietà e di utile lavoro, falsano la psicologia dei popoli. Finché l'uomo rimane l'essere debole e vulnerabile e anche cattivo, quale spesso è, le armi della difesa, saranno necessarie, purtroppo, sempre parole sue. Studiate, lo diceva l'ONU, come garantire la sicurezza della vita internazionale senza ricorso alle armi. Sollevate dalle pesanti spese degli armamenti e liberate dall'incubo della guerra sempre imminente, il quale deforma la psicologia. Ecco, per questo parliamo di una pace disarmata e disarmante. E cominciamo, adesso sì, in ordine alfabetico, con il cardinale Fridolin Ambongo Besungu, arcivescovo di Kinshasa, dal 2018. È stato vicepresidente della Conferenza Episcopale della Repubblica Democratica del Congo, ne ha presieduto per 8 anni la Commissione Giustizia e Pace e purtroppo di armi ce ne sono parecchie nel suo paese, di una guerra terribile. Nel 2017 assume un ruolo di primo piano nella ricerca di una soluzione pacifica alla crisi politica in atto nel paese, purtroppo a tanta violenza. Viene creato cardinale da Papa Francesco nel 2019. È impegnato per la pace e la giustizia nel suo paese, tra l'altro è anche lui un figlio di San Francesco nel senso tecnico del termine, e di fronte a violenze politiche e passaggi elettorali difficili ha mostrato tanta fermezza di parola, tanto coraggio, tanto amore per provare a disarmare le mani e i cuori, e gli diamo volentieri la parola.
Bonjour à tout le monde. Une paix désarmée pour la République démocratique du Congo, une paix désarmante pour l'Afrique et le monde. chers organisateurs, chers participants, mesdames et messieurs, le contexte de notre conférence est celui d'un monde fragmenté, épuisé par des guerres persistantes qui entretiennent une crise morale globale. En Afrique et en République démocratique du Congo, des initiatives de paix se multiplient, mais elles se vident souvent de leur subsistance. Elles sont généralement réduites à des formules diplomatiques ou à des outils d'instrumentalisation. D'où le questionnement qui nous préoccupe. Quelle est la nature véritable de la paix? Que signifie une paix désarmée et désarmante? Et quelle responsabilité implique-t-elle? Après avoir l'an passé à Paris imaginé la paix, nous sommes aujourd'hui appelés à oser la paix. Oser, c'est franchir la peur, refuser la fatalité et s'armer de courage pour agir. C'est le courage des femmes et des hommes qui continuent de désarmer les cœurs au milieu de guerres. C'est également le courage des mères qui protègent leurs enfants sous des tirs et des bombardements. C'est aussi le courage de la résilience de communautés qui choisissent la vie malgré les armes. Je voudrais saluer ici le courage de la communauté de Sant'Egidio, dont la médiation persévérante ouvre sans relâche des chemins de paix. Dans cette ligne, ma réflexion s'articulera autour de 3 moments: la signification de la paix désarmée et désarmante, la paix désarmée en République démocratique du Congo, la paix désarmante en Afrique et dans le monde. Premier point. La paix désarmée et désarmante, un
atto di coraggio. Quando Papa Leone XIV parlava di una pace disarmata e disarmante, proponeva un mandato profetico per il nostro tempo. Oggi però la parola pace è abusata e distorta. È spesso usata come slogan, strumento politico o copertura per interessi economici. Per noi cristiani, però, questa parola ha un valore semantico ammirevole. Infatti, pace è un nome sacro di Dio, Yahweh Shalom, Giudici 6:24. E, come ci ricorda San Paolo, Cristo è la nostra pace, F2:14. Secondo Papa Leone XIV, una pace disarmata non si impone con la forza, non consiste nel riunire i belligeranti davanti alle telecamere per firmare accordi effimeri. Piuttosto si costruisce nel silenzio della verità, dell'ascolto, del dialogo e della responsabilità verso le vittime. È disarmata perché rifiuta la logica del dominio. Vuole essere disarmante perché tocca i cuori e rovescia la logica dell'odio. Tale pace nasce da un processo lungo e impegnativo, è un cammino che inizia da ferite profonde e conduce a un'umanità riconciliata. Questa pace richiede umiltà, giustizia e conversione interiore. In breve, la vera pace non si impone, si coltiva. Secondo punto, una pace disarmata per la Repubblica Democratica del Congo. Io vengo dalla Repubblica Democratica del Congo, un paese
mais meurtri qui vit depuis plus de 30 ans l'un des conflits les plus anciens d'Afrique. Plus de 120 groupes armés demeurent actifs dans les provinces de l'Ituri du Nord Kivu, du Sud Kivu et parfois du Tanganyika. À l'ouest, le conflit de Mobondo s'étend jusqu'au plateau de Bateke. Il faut compter des conflits similaires çà et là dans le pays. Des guerres ont causé de millions de morts, des villages détruits, des familles dispersées dans un silence coupable d'un monde qui continue de profiter du pillage systématique des ressources de ce pays. Pourtant, ces drames ne trouveront aucune solution durable par les armes. Tandis que les groupes armés se multiplient, les conflits se généralisent, les institutions, quant à elles, qui perdent. Avec regret que les budgets nationaux consacrent toujours plus de moyens à l'armement et toujours moins à la solidarité. Mais qu'est-ce qui rendra le monde plus sûr? Des arsenaux puissants ou des politiques justes et solidaires envers les pauvres? L'expérience congolaise le démontre. La course aux armes conduit à la ruine du bien commun. Or, la paix n'est pas simplement l'absence de guerre, mais le fruit de l'ordre voulu par Dieu. Elle suppose la justice, la dignité et la lutte contre les causes structurelles de la pauvreté et de la corruption. La Conférence épiscopale nationale du Congo, SENCO, le rappelle. Il est illusoire de croire que la paix peut être imposée par la force. Elle n'est que d'un dialogue sincère et d'une volonté politique réelle pour le bien commun. Dans cette optique, la SENCO et les pasteurs protestants du Congo réunis au sein de l'Église du Christ au Congo, à travers leur pacte pour la paix et le bien vivre ensemble, appellent à un dialogue national inclusif, réunissant toutes les forces vives, y compris celles qui ont pris les armes. Les Congolais ne demandent pas une trêve, mais une conversion des esprits. Non des promesses, mais l'engagement à désarmer les cœurs avant les armes. Ces pactes sociaux reposent sur les 5 principes fondamentaux suivants. 1. Restaurer les valeurs sociales et spirituelles des communautés locales. 2. Résoudre les conflits par le dialogue et aborder les causes profondes sans violence. 3. Embrasser la diversité pour renforcer l'unité du pays et avec le pays voisin. 4. Persuader les dirigeants politiques d'arrêter les conflits armés en promouvant le développement durable et en luttant contre l'exploitation des ressources naturelles. 5. Encourager un soutien international sincère pour la justice, la paix et la durabilité environnementale. Pour sa mise en œuvre, nous avons proposé la formulation de commissions techniques composées d'experts et d'académiques sur la paix et la cohésion sociale. Ceux-ci travailleront sur différents fronts, formuleront une charte nationale pour la paix et l'harmonie à présenter tant aux chefs de l'État qu'au gouvernement. Il est enfin prévu la convocation d'une conférence internationale pour la paix, le développement conjoint et la coexistence dans la région des Grands Lacs. Troisième point, une paix désarmante pour l'Afrique et le monde. Désarmante doit dépasser les frontières. Les conflits congolais s'enracinent dans des dynamiques régionales, ingérence étrangère, convoitise sur les ressources, rivalité ethnique et fragilité institutionnelle. Une paix durable au Congo suppose une paix continentale fondée sur la fraternité et la souveraineté partagée. Comme je l'ai souligné lors du symposium des conférences épiscopales d'Afrique et de Madagascar, SECAM, l'Afrique ne se relèvera que si elle choisit la voie de la solidarité et de la fraternité. Si la guerre est contagieuse, la paix l'est davantage. Enracinée dans la justice, elle devient un feu, d'où qui désarme le discours de haine. La paix en RD Congo pourrait devenir ainsi un modèle et un signal d'espérance pour d'autres conflits du continent et au-delà de l'Afrique. Le pape François, dans Fratelli Tutti, enseigne que la paix sociale est laborieuse, artisanale. Elle exige un travail patient, une écoute, une renaissance de l'autre. Et lors de sa visite à Kinshasa, le 1er février 2023, le pape François lançait « Retirez vos mains de la RD Congo, cessez d'étouffer l'Afrique. Elle n'est pas une mine à exploiter, ni une terre à dévaliser. » Une paix désarmante est donc celle qui désarme les esprits, démilitarise les discours et dépouille les cœurs de la haine. Elle guérit et convertit. En conclusion, la paix que nous voulons pour la République démocratique du Congo et pour l'Afrique est désarmée parce qu'elle rejette la violence. Elle se veut aussi désarmante parce qu'elle transforme les cœurs. Elle est prophétique parce qu'elle annonce un monde nouveau. Que cette paix soit notre engagement, notre prière et notre combat, et qu'elle devienne, par la grâce de Dieu, notre réalité.
Grazie, grazie anche di essere stato nei tempi, grazie perché può divenire un modello, ecco, quindi non è un irenismo, ma può diventare un modello e può trasformare quegli incubi invece in una pace possibile. È detto dal cardinal Fridolin Ambongo Besungo, di uno dei paesi, come ha detto all'inizio, attraversato da una guerra tra quelle che durano da più tempo, che si eternizzano, si cronicizzano, davvero sono parole importanti. Do la parola a Muhammad Yusuf Kalla, presidente della Indonesian Mosque Council, uomo politico, d'affari e diplomatico indonesiano. È stato vicepresidente dell'Indonesia per 2 mandati, dal 2004 al 2009 sotto il presidente Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono e poi anche il secondo dal 2014 al 2019 con Joko Widodo. Mediatore nei processi di pace in diverse regioni dell'Indonesia, tra cui Sulawesi e Aceh, forse quest'ultimo è un conflitto ancora più noto in Italia, e figura di spicco della politica e della società indonesiana, impegnato in attività umanitarie, nel dialogo interreligioso attraverso la Croce Rossa indonesiana e varie organizzazioni per la pace. Lo ascoltiamo molto volentieri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning for all, and salam for everybody. Thank you for these occasions. I visit from Indonesia with our friend. Today, we discuss about daring peace. Why peace? Because only peace can make welfare for everybody. Only peace can economy growing. Only peace can our children can go into school. Only peace we can make a plan for our future. Only peace we can smile for everybody. And war destroy all. Very costly. Million people will die and making our collapse in country. We know every day seeing what happened in Gaza, what happened in the world, Vietnam, Korea, destroy all. And people no future. That's why thank you for discovering about peace, because peace is for our future. There are some quotations say that in peace, son and daughter bury their father for natural causes. In war or conflict, father bury their son and daughter for human causes. Only peace, not war, can tell the beauty of future. There are quotations to say that the end of war is peace, but the end of peace is war. That's why we should talking about how to make peace for a long time. Root causes of war are various and change over time. However, as the expert found that there are three main causes, and that's called 3G. First, God, glory, and gold. God relation to religion, belief, and ideology. Gold related to believing superiority and supremacy. Gold point the economic reason, greed, monopoly, and possession. These three reasons mainly our war in the world and how to make peace, to make a plan for our future. War can done every time here, but peace. But make war very costly. Many people will die. But peace, very cheap. Only meeting maybe many times, make dialogue, make agreement and peace. Very cheap. That's why we destroy all and believe with very costly cheap. But peace needed a good thinking and look. Now last night and here about peace. I told you our experiences in Indonesia. Within 80 years our independence, since 45, there happened around 15 big conflicts in Indonesia. What I mean conflict is the people, more than 1,000 died. More than. Sometimes, some of them are 20,000 died. 15 times we have conflict. Why the conflict? 10 of them because inequality. Inequality. In economy, in social, in politics, or the others. Inequality. 10 of the 15 conflict war in Indonesia because inequality. That's why this government should be balancing the equality of life of the people. Some conflict within there are And some conflict because religion. Not because religion, because politics to the region. Democracy in Indonesia, liberal democracy making war. Because before we are harmony life, and democracy, liberal democracy, make it unbalanced, the winner take all. This happened in our country. This happened anywhere in equality. That's why government, people, and leaders, and why the war because religion is very important thing. Because the leaders of religions making mistake. Why? Let's make example. The chairman have saying also Sulawesi and Maluku, the conflict there between Muslim and Christian people. 5,000 have died because of the conflict. Why? Because unbalance in democracy. Because democracy tell the winner take all, no harmony. The people, many leaders of the area, is not thinking well. And are from politics. Because why religion? Because religion, the people can follow in the leaders because one reason, the mystic reason. The leaders say that if you kill the others, or if Christian people say, if you kill Muslim and destroy the masjid, you go into heaven. It's the same Muslim leaders say, if you kill the Christian and destroy the church, you go into heaven. And I come. That time, 3 years conflict. 5,000 died. 800 houses have fire. No school children. I go there when I'm minister, say to them, very simple say. I discuss with the leader of Muslim and Christian. I true that if people kill each other go into heaven? Without the reason, they say no. Okay, good. And I make a big mass spot, Christian and Muslim, the other side. Different say. I said, no, you thinking going to heaven? No, you're going to hell, all of you. You're going to hell because you destroy you kill each other, and you will go into hell. Within 2 weeks, they stop. This is because reason only. Because they kill each other because heaven. And I said, you go to hell. And they stop. Within 2 weeks, was 3 years, I stopped it within 2 weeks because only small war, hell, happened to everybody. You see. There are very radical in many religions. We call it terrorists. The reason same, heaven. It means the role of religion is very important to say that. No. Sometimes I'm too leader of mosque. They say no, because many people say yes, you go to heaven. This is one reason to do that because God. Why they thinking that? When I'm on the other side, in Maluku, you know, because European coming to Indonesia because Maluku, that time, very rich with many thing to do in the area. It's the same, precisely the same in Poso. Political democracy. Before in the country, if governor is Islam, his vice governor is Christian. If governor is Christian, his vice governor Muslim. Democracy changes, the winner take all. That's why we should thinking about that harmony for the people. That it's the same way. I tell to them in the field, we will find the people in the big field, 10,000, 20,000 there. I say that you are in war. I give you a chance to do the same. First, I give you more bullet to kill each other. He said, no. I send more army to kill in Wing Star. He said, no. And then discuss with me. Some of them, what is just discuss. And I tell them again, you think you're going to heaven? No, you're going to hell. Why you fire the school? Why you fire the university? Why you fire any house here? And within 17 days, they stop. With dialogue, with how to make a dialogue for peace, making dignity for all. Even I am Muslim, I am very independent of them. And they stop it. Because the game of heaven and hell. This is important for all to make more easier way to do that. And they stop it. We are only 3 days dialogue in one small town in Sulawesi. Why I read in small town? Because no communication there. If I make a dialogue in the big city, and many come to making, instruction. But in small city, village, no communication, and they agree to make a sign, the peaceful resolution within 3 days, and after that, we are campaigning and stop all it. Now, if you come to Sulawesi, if you come to Ambon, very peace. And no more new mosque, new church, and new life of them. My experience too in Aceh. Aceh is in Sumatra, the north, west Indonesia. War for 30 years, killing 15,000 people there because inequality in economy. They reach with gas and oil, but the people is still poor. The result is going to central government, of course. We are negotiate. I need 2 years to negotiate with them. Finally, we negotiated in third country, in Helsinki. The President Secretariat mediates the meeting. And we make a new economy, especially economy, government, and say, okay, no independence, but let's give us a new chance. It's good. This is the situation in how to make a progress. I visit Afghanistan, Cambodia, and the others for peaceful solution for that, mostly because inequality, life in the people. That's why I think we don't not only discuss about peace, but how equality of life in the people can be better before now. Thank you.
Grazie anche per questi successi di queste guerre così sanguinose e dolorose. E poi la guerra è sempre un inferno, non c'è dubbio. Ed è giusto che appunto non non va in paradiso con l'inferno. Grazie. Do la parola la pronuncia spero che sia più o meno Donia Kawak. Grazie, molto. Dal presidente della fondazione.
Chairperson of the Leader pour la Paix Foundation of France, and she has been secretary and then director general of this foundation. It's a foundation that brings together high-level international personalities committed to the promotion to peace and to multilateralism. A very important organization. She started in Paris and worked as a banker, as an entrepreneur, and has long been committed towards the promotion of women in her native Tunisia. And she's been an active member of French political life for some years, important at national and international levels. Level for the government of France. We're very proud to have her here with us. And you have the floor, madam. It is an honor for me to be here to protect the necessity of peace when everything is filled with the dinner war and the deafening silence of those who have allowed it to happen. To dare to seek peace is to begin to build peace. Where there is danger, there is salvation, as Erdely reminded us, because daring to seek peace is to begin to build it. And this is the ultimate paradox of our time. Our humanity has now had so many tools for progress, so many means of action, and is now seeing the return of war, to the increase of inequalities and explosion of violence. This year, 1 million people throughout the world have been exposed to conflict. 2024 was the most violent year since the end of the Cold War. And war costs $5 a day for every human being on the planet. So this is say $14,000 billion per year for humanity. That is to say 10% of global GDP. What are the root causes of this great upheaval, and how can we remedy it so that peace is neither a transaction, as proposed by some leaders, nor perpetual nor utopian, so that its scope goes beyond the absence of war, because world hunger, climate insecurity, health insecurity, economic inequalities, they kill just as much as bombs. A couple of explanations are necessary here. Our humanity has made huge strides in technical progress, but has significantly lost ground in terms of human progress, and this is reflected in a decline of solidarity, of transcendence and spirituality, and the breakdown of the family, and to put it briefly, the weakening of everything that binds us together as a society, or used to bind us together as a society. The second cause of the explosion of violence is the decline of politics. Politics was created in order to prevent war, because let's face it, peace is not a political project anymore. Respect for international law, for humanitarian law, for law in general. It is no longer the politics of choice for most world leaders. And may I recall that in the year 2023, 70% of world citizens lived under an autocratic regime. Behind every decision to wage war or make peace, there is a leader. President Mattarella yesterday forcefully reminded us that peace can only be achieved through a change in behavior, a change of paradigm, and a change. And this point is, in my opinion, UNESCO's motto. Since wars begin in the minds of men, and it is in the minds of men that defense of peace must be constructed. If the spirit of war is so strong, it is above all because, let's not forget it, this is the preferred choice for many leaders today. In an era of asymmetric warfare and cyber manipulation, with endless wars and frozen conflicts, resolution is constantly postponed, let's make no mistake. In the great upheaval of the world we're experiencing today, there will be no more winners. There will be victims, many victims, but no more winners.
because power is proven increasingly impotent and less reliable. And as we've seen in the military operations since the end of World War II, these wars have not bring about any peace and security. The United States have spent millions and millions in Afghanistan, and that has not led to peace. Maybe they should invest in more in education. But you may ask if there are no more winners, and if there are only many victims, why do we keep dying together with rage in our hearts? As Albert Camus said, what can we do to ensure that the voices of global peace are less shy? And what can we do in order to prevent the reenactments of lack of humanity, killings, famines in such countries as Sudan, Yemen, Ukraine, in Gaza and elsewhere? How can we make all this come to an end? I'll answer later to this question. The third root of violence is the absence of a courageous political leadership capable of organizing and coordinating a strong response to those who promote the violation of law. Today, we're facing a crisis of political courage in the countries of the North. Despite a broad consensus in the North for a multilateral system, there's no political voice capable of standing up to the leaders who are undermining our rules. So there's an urgent need for the silent clan, but a clan that holds a majority, to come out of its posture of political submission. How many opportunities were missed at the Munich conference, at the NATO summit, and more recently at the United Nations General Assembly? No replies, no answers, no responses. The fourth important factor in the growing instability is the rise of the financial economy and the low redistribution of wealth, especially within companies. Paul Krugman puts it forcefully: extreme income concentration is incompatible with real democracy. Peace without development is a Bernanosian sham. The reform of capitalism, which is urgent, must be brought about first of all by private actors. Wealth must be redistributed first and foremost within companies, not solely through state collection in the form of taxes and fiscal pressure. Otherwise, we will pay very dear for what Stiglitz called the price of inequality. The fifth explanation, which follows from the previous ones, is climate change. We know very well that several wars emerged from the climate crisis. For instance, the Sahel and its fortification. Today, we live in climatically fragile areas, volatile areas, where there is a risk of conflict. And this, of course, the Sahel, the Horn of Africa, the Middle East, but also Southeast Asia. The sixth root cause of the threat to peace is poor governance and the lack of quality leaders in the countries of the South. The government regulatory deficit is a serious threat to peace. How can we ensure a future without strong public policies on health, education, food sovereignty for thousands of people? Africa, which has the highest number of conflicts in our planet, suffers from weak government, and aid to development doesn't work because it is based on weak government and corrupt government, and the depletion of leadership capacity by the current political systems has created a particularly dangerous political vacuum. And the present political choices that young Africans have is either dictatorship or armed groups. I am a witness of this because I'm from Tunisia, and I see that, and I saw firsthand this problem fueled by Ben Ali. And the rise of fundamentalism is one of the main causes of the collapse of the systems, and mass disinformation artificial intelligence is opening a cognitive era that makes it possible to discredit the government in just a few minutes, prepare a military attack in a less costly way and in a less identifiable way than a conventional attack. AI has greatly contributed to making the war industry more accessible. We live in an area where attacking costs much less than defending. And I'll give you an example. To shoot down an attack drone, which costs about $200, you need to use a Patriot missile that costs instead $3 million. The cost of a cyber attack that can paralyze a country is virtually zero. We also know that algorithms have helped the victory of populist regimes, which keep using them. Social networks, for instance, are the best infrastructure for this type of narration, which limits the authenticity so sought after by our citizens. May I remind you of the excellent work of Catherine Fieschi on the tyranny of authenticity. And she says, quote, "The fake authenticity of populist leaders who speak without notes to pin natural and spontaneous invites voters to feel before they think. Even blatant untruths or gaffes reinforce their charisma. They certify an unvarnished humanity. Any procedure, any compromise, whether it be parliaments or courts or journalists, is seen as a caste maneuver aimed at filtering out the voice of the real people, living out the voice of the real people," unquote. We must defend this threat. We must defend ourselves against these threats. And what can we do before in the face of the new paradigms? Well, clear the answer is innovation. Daring to pursue peace means, in essence, being innovators of peace. As Paul Ricoeur reminded us, imagination sets us free from resignation. What are the roads to reform, reform institutions? Eminences, you still avoiding the most dangerous thing there is. Kofi Annan said, UN doesn't no longer reflect the world in which we live. And there is no permanent member from Africa in the Security Council. You know, you're aware of this. You're very much aware of the use and abuse of the right of veto. Over 70% of UN resolutions are not implemented by the member states. We are creating, together with a number of organizations, we're working on order to reform the United Nations Charter, so as to integrate non-governmental diplomacy, non-governmental organization within the decision-making processes at the United Nations, like the Committee of Sant'Egidio, whose immense work I salute. And we need to support international organizations like, importantly, international organizations like the International Criminal Court, International Court of Justice. They are the legitimate guarantors. They are the guarantors of international law. Another fundamental lever for action is to promote the rise of a new generation of leaders, change the face, change the paradigm of all those who act politically. For 10 years, our organization, Leaders for Peace, has worked to give roots to a global culture of peace that integrates institutional and non-institutional actors through diplomatic and educational services actions. Tolstoy reminded us that peace begins with social behavior. This generation of young people, the largest in human history, gives us an opportunity. We have made a decision to invest in the young people by training an international pool of young leaders, and we want to give countries of the South a new leadership. Keep talking about Africa, because this is the continent where our project has been unfolded. Africa is the continent that is faced with the imbalance of security of climate. The future of Africa will concern us all, will be pivotal in international relations in the next few years. And the continent needs a strong institutional and strong governmental regulatory framework to ensure sovereignty, to offer sustainable prospects for youth. There are 2,000 academic institutions in Africa, for more than 1 billion inhabitants, while in the US there are 5,000 institutions for 350 million people. And this is not commensurate with the needs. Within a university, beyond understanding the challenges of global governance, we need to understand the value of the dignity of the human person. We need to defend that dignity in the sense of the enlightenment of Robert Antelme. We should confront the horror of deportation. And thanks to the support of Pope Francis, Leaders for Peace has worked together with the Pontifical Lateran University and trained seminars committed to peace. Now, my time is over and I should leave out a couple of things, but I would like to say a couple of important things. Among these innovations, we must also create strong financial foundation, because money is at the root of war, but it's also at the root of peace. And the withdrawal of the US from USAID has significantly affected peace efforts. Countries like Cambodia are heavily dependent on it, and philanthropy is not considered by investors to be a profitable asset. So we must mobilize, we must strengthen the role of our religious leaders. Your words, Eminence, had the power to inspire us. Yesterday, I was listening to you, and I said to myself, all these people, all these men are advocating the same values. They're praying for the same God. They are praying for the same values. They have thousands of faithful who follow them. There are thousands of young people who follow them. And because the issue at hand is peace, I would like to express one wish. Our Committee for Human Fraternity should be extended to the 3 monotheistic religions, which are currently in conflict, but can also speak the same language. And before I wrap up, dear friends, I would like to pay homage to Pope Francis, because Pope Francis opened us his doors in more than an occasion, and he supported our work for peace. And I'll never forget his emotion, the emotion of this great universal man. His words resounded in the hearts of those who heard them, regardless of their religion and their nationality. And every conflict is specific, but wars are often have often a common cause. So we must try and build a political project resting on a political project, and we should work for the social health among peoples, as Pope Francis said. Thank you very much.
Grazie.
Thank you. Thank you, Donia, for your passionate speech.
È l'unica donna, quindi.
She's the only woman here in our panel, so thank you again for this passionate defense of multilateralism and of politics that are able to face crises, and perhaps the lack of politics, the dangers inherent in disinformation, and the upholding of international law and these rules. This is so important. If we want to repudiate war, we need sovereign to otherwise the strongest and the fittest will prevail. Now I would like to give the floor to Maurizio Landini. He is the Secretary General of CGIL for 7 years. He has been a secretary of the Federation of Metal and Mechanical Workers, FIOM, and then he became the Secretary General of the General Confederation of Labor, and which is really, this organization represents a sizable portion of Italian workers and retired workers as well. So very gladly, I would like to give him the floor at this point. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity.
Momento credo molto importante.
It is a very important moment And for me personally, this is just an opportunity just not to say what I think and speak out. But I think that in these times it is very important to listen as well and also understand in a forum like this, an international forum. We need to understand what's going on and what we need to then set in motion in order to face a completely unprecedented situation in such a difficult situation that is so complicated. I've never experienced this myself in my life. And I cannot hide that then daring peace, basically, and seeking the claim of peace is not just a means of just putting war to an end, because I see the risk of something else that's looming on the horizon, as if war had become a system that risks changing the scenario that we have always lived in until now. And I'm saying this, trying to bring into this debate the point of view of a trade union, the point of view of the labor world, trying to give a voice to those who have a very weak voice nowadays, although the contradiction right now is that the number of people who need to work in order to live has never been as big as it is now. But in these last few years, everywhere, we have witnessed a devaluation of work that is unprecedented and an increase in inequalities that is unprecedented. And these things, I believe, are connected to what is happening right now. Not only because peace and social justice, either they go together or both of them will not be achieved, but also, I'm sorry if I will try to be quite succinct, but I'm trying to stick to the time allotted to me. But right now, we're not just going through a crisis of politics and multilateralism, which is happening and needs to be addressed. What I believe has happened and that we need to try and counter and change is the development of a culture in politics where at the center we no longer have the human person or social justice, but at the center we have the market and profit. I believe that this is the basic problem that we need to address, because the questions that also come from younger generations, well, their question is, we want to have a future. And there are a number of questions that are related to this and issues: climate change, technology, social justice, again. Well, these issues require very specific projects and outlooks and points of view. So, which means being against the system of war and fighting for peace. But in order to build peace, and also we need to build a new social model, in my humble opinion. I'm saying this because if you think about it, I'm saying this also from the standpoint of the history of trade unions. Now, I believe, well, we are celebrating the 80th anniversary of the establishment of the United Nations, I guess. And if you think about it, our grandparents and our parents have lived through 2 world wars. Then the development of multilateral tools has been the condition to try and live in peace. And if you think about it, back then, until the 1980s, the idea of a common security was based on 3 principles. Now are cooperate. One, the role in politics, and third was disarmament. I believe that these three pillars are being questioned, all 3 of them nowadays. And if you think about it, I do not know whether you share my views, but the word itself, war, was used differently at some point. in the 1980s and the beginning of the year 2000, preemptive or preventive war was a concept that was introduced. And in some cases, this was an instrument to export democracy. And I believe that something began, something wrong was triggered that does not work, and it began at that time. And I believe that right now, the picture that we have in front of us, well, when we talk about weapons, we are not just merely talking about military, let's say, equipment, but rather we are talking about a power structure that is also redefining management systems. And from my standpoint, this undermines the concept itself of democracy as a real instrument for participation for citizens and people in decision-making. And perhaps the redefinition itself of peace and also building peace right now. Well, we should not just think about peace as the absence of war. It goes beyond this. When confronted by these changes that are happening, we have to rethink about new rules, new democratic rules, new rules for sharing that will allow us to face these major changes that we are confronted by. Climate change, for instance, but if we think about migration, if we think about the use of technologies and who controls these technologies, the power that revolves around the use of technologies all over the world and involving individual states, maybe a new social model should be devised, which once again puts the human person and labor at the center as fundamental tenets that we should start afresh from. And in this sense, I believe that it is important to state that the role of trade unions on a fundamental point must take a stance and also have a clear stance. And I'm saying this that the Secretary of the World Trade Union took part in our demonstrations. And right now, in this last week of October, the World Trade Union has launched a mobilization campaign with one word at the center, that of blocking the politics of rearmament. And I believe that this is a central issue right now, because the amount of money and assets and resources that are used for rearmament is unprecedented in our history. And not only this is an alternative to many other investments that should be made, but this risks then bringing to the fore a culture that basically undermines the prospect of extending democracy. Sorry if I'm so blunt in saying so. And for this reason, I believe that democracy is defended. You can defend democracy by practicing democracy. And practicing democracy means that we're not just on. Instead of this industrial trade, men and women, they should be put in a condition to be part of this conversation. Not just right now in these last few weeks, when, as a trade union organization, when we use the tool that we have available, a general strike, and we did not ask our workers to then strike because they wanted a higher salary, more time off. We asked them to strike to say no to what's happening in Palestine, a heinous crime where the existence of that people was being undermined. And we asked workers to strike to say no to this rearmament that is now rampant. And when someone told us, well, that's not your job, what are you doing? Well, I think, and I'm saying this very openly, I think that if we hadn't actually done that, we would have not done our job to defend the rights of working men and women. Because the condition in order to have rights is that there is peace and there is no war. And now more than ever, if we think about investment policies, well, they should follow a completely different direction. And I'm saying this because there is a concentration of wealth globally that is unprecedented. We are now witnessing the fact, and I saw the Pope Leo XIV when he met with all people's movements, and he mentioned this. So this is a basic point. So the famous 1% of wealthy people, and they rule the world against the remaining 99%, they've become even richer. And I would like to go back to something that I found very convincing that I read somewhere. A very specific thing. We've been deprived of necessary things, and instead we are flooded by superfluous things that are not useful for people. They're useful just for the market. And I believe that this is perhaps a very important starting point as an element that we can build on. And I believe that we cannot just, sit and watch what's going on, but we have to ask ourselves how each and every one of us, wherever we are, trying to build a coalition that is able to cross borders and bring together all people and all peoples, because there will never be, let's say, a second half in this game, right? We cannot just stand idly by hoping that the storm will just pass by, because these processes that are in motion, they risk basically being a point of no return. This race to rearmament, the nuclear rearmament, it's something that risks undermining the existence of life on this planet. And so why is it important to me to be here? Not just to speak, but very humbly to listen and understand from you all. Because I do think that either we all become, everyone basically in doing their job, if we all become builders of brotherhood and solidarity in diversity, otherwise then another model will prevail, which will deprive us of our freedom and it would deprive us of our democracy. I believe that these are the basic points, and I feel the need because I see something new emerging. And I'm saying this very bluntly, as it is required in a conversation like this. Individualism, right? The fact that everyone should be self-sufficient, this is actually no longer true. This has prevails right now, and there's a crisis going on, and we know that the West had played a role in the past in Europe. Now there is a very obvious crisis of this ability, of this capacity. My last comment is, and this is that I've seen happening over the last few days, young people and women have taken to the streets everywhere. That's the new element. And they have brought forward a request for change. When I see and hear younger generations who see no future in front of them, but they do not just hide the streets and rearmament, no to precarious work, and they want to then be fulfilled in their lives, and use their intelligence to dream of a better future. So each one of us, even if we are older, we must be too. We have to take action and reply and respond to these requests coming from young people. Please allow me to say one last thing, so the bell will not ring another time. This is my last point. You see, if there's something I've learned in my experience as worker and then as trade union rep, is that processes in the workplace, they always come before social processes. And when on the workplace, freedom is curtailed and democracy is curtailed because work is precarious, because everything is subcontracted, because people die on the job, and the exploitation of man over man becomes exacerbated. This leads to a reduction, a diminution of democracy outside of the workplace. So since I'm seeing this happening, now more than ever, I do feel that brotherhood and solidarity are not just empty words, but they need to be practiced. And since I'm long in the tooth, and I can say this, I believe that today the fight for solidarity and against precarious work should not be waged by precarious workers and weak individuals. Instead, people who are not precarious and weak should actually take action. Solidarity means whether those who are better off fight for those who are worse off. This is the true element for change. So I feel this need. I feel this need because this gives rise to an issue of change. I'm talking about these things also in my household. What is happening, honestly, change is required also from traditional trade union organizations. They need to open up and they need to be able to go back in the midst of people, next to people, to solve problems people have. No one should be left behind. And solidarity is something that must be practiced in real life. And this is not an alternative. I think that now the fight for peace, the struggle for solidarity, for rights and social justice, they are not things that are different from each other. They are one and the same. And I believe this is what we have to do, and actually spare no efforts and use all our intelligence and all the energies that we can muster to revert this trend and to change this model by which war has become a normal tool once again. We cannot accept this. We have to take to the streets to create the conditions for change and a democratic participation that is able to invert this trend. Thank you.
Grazie Maurizio Landini.
Thank you very much, Maurizio. He reminded us of the important statistical data with relation to the last 20 years, that inequality in our world, in our country, has increased, and it doesn't seem to me that this has led to any moral reaction, to any moral condemnation. And then, of course, race to arms, the cost of the arms race, and peace belongs to everybody. And so individualism is against peace. And there's a strong link between peace and rights. And I'll give the floor to an old friend of mine, although he's not old, Deputy Prime Minister of Lebanon, who was director of the Eastern Far East Institute of Public Policies at the American University in Beirut, and Chancellor of the Beirut St. George's University. He has often been a member of government in Lebanon from 2005 to 2011, and in the years 2012-2014 he was special representative and head of the mission of the United Nations mission to support Libya, and has been Deputy Prime Minister since February this year in the government led by Joseph Rahoun. A government was taken office after a 2-year-long political void. And without further ado, I'm happy to give him the floor.
Old friend, and it's very difficult to speak after Maurizio, but I'll try. As I was listening yesterday to the speeches of all these great women and men that spoke to us, I was thinking of what I call the skeptics, the cynics, and the disillusioned. what would they say? And I think most of them will tell us war is inevitable, there's nothing you can do about it. They will tell us in most wars, it's might that defeats right. Might is stronger than right in today's world. But the world has been wrestling with this notion of might and right. And this is why we have international law, we have international humanitarian law. These were constructed in order to prevent wars, but then if wars are inevitable, then there are rules of wars that need to be respected, and there are rules that mitigate the effect of wars on the civilian population. This is the meaning of international humanitarian law. And there is a very simple pillar on which the system rests. And the simple is that our humanity is common. No human being is superior to another. And no nation is superior to any other nation. It was believed that international law and international humanitarian law will prevent wars, that it's a bulwark against wars. And if, God forbid, wars happen, then we have international humanitarian law. Now, definitely in today is well-prepared erosion of the multilateral institutions that uphold international law. For international law, national law depended on the good faith of nations. And therefore, there is nothing coercive in imposing international law. Over the past decades, key institutions that uphold international law have been diminished, crippled, or compromised. Let me take one example. The International Criminal Court is declared on the list of sanctions by the government of the United States of America. And you know what the international criminal law, it was established here in Rome, following the Rome Treaty, to which many powerful nations did not adhere. It was welcomed as an instrument of the international community to put an end to impunity, to crimes of war, to crimes against humanity. But then this institution is more at risk. Think of the International Court of Justice. International Court of Justice has issued an advisory opinion on Gaza. It said that a genocide is plausible in Gaza, and that there is a responsibility for international community to prevent the probability of a genocide. Now, it addressed itself to the whole international community. Did the world respond to the highest international court? The unfolding plausible genocide continued in Gaza in spite of the provisional measures of ICJ. So much so that people have become skeptical, cynical, disillusioned. You know, I have an anecdote. Our government organizes occasional training sessions for civil servants and diplomats on international law and international humanitarian law. And I was giving them a lecture, and there was a young diplomat, woman diplomat in the back seats. She waited till I finished, and then she stood up and said, "What are you talking about? International law is buried under the rubble of Gaza." So it's an uphill battle to restore confidence in international law, that something positive by way of preventing wars or stopping wars may come out of it, or regulating wars short of stopping them. International humanitarian law is at the crossroads also. It was a universal touchstone for safeguarding human dignity during conflicts, but it is eroding at an alarming pace. The trouble is that violations in the past that were seen shocking, exceptional and shocking, have become persistent, widespread, and even tolerated or considered normal. War crimes have been normalized. And there are 20 wars in the world of today, and 57 internal conflicts, and all, without exception, have committed war crimes. Many have committed crimes against humanity. Protracted wars overlap with novel clashes, and our core observation is the unrelenting toll on civilians. And who among the civilians? The poorer, those who are most vulnerable. The alarming state of international humanitarian law is more than a reflection of increased conflict. It's the symbol of our collective failure to prioritize the principle of humanity. It is as simple as that, upon which this international order rests. An additional reason for recurrent wars in our world and violent conflicts is in our inability to reconcile peace-building efforts or peace-seeking efforts with the imperative of justice. You know, I've been a mediator in my own country, Lebanon and Libya, but also in other countries such as Bosnia and Herzegovina, Nigeria, or the Sudan. And I was always tortured by the idea that we're making peace, or trying to make peace, many times between the victims and those who perpetrated atrocities against them. And somehow, to succeed in mediation, for a while, you need to forget about justice. And then we're happy to achieve peace, but then we realize that the cessation of hostilities or a ceasefire is precarious. And then fighting starts all over again. For we are at the root flag about justice, separate from peace, rather than corollary to it as many people tend to think. Every fragile peace achieved a cessation of hostilities, almost every, did not put an end to a conflict. Somehow, the conflict re-emerged later for the same causes that brought the earlier conflict, that is, injustice, had not been addressed. And we've often made distinction between stable peace and just peace. But in fact, no peace is stable unless it is just. I noticed that among politicians, they don't use the word peace very frequently. They use the word stability. I know of our visitors that come to my country and say, all we hope for is stability in Lebanon. I rarely hear them say what we long for, peace in Lebanon, not just stability. For no peace can be stable unless it is based on justice. And when I'm saying this, I'm trying to be Christian. I think in the Bible, justice and peace embrace each other. We cannot separate justice from peace. The pursuit of justice and the struggle for peace are so intertwined, so inextricably bound together, that you cannot separate them. To conclude, I have 1 minute, maybe, before the bell rings. I think that reaffirming and upholding international law, using international humanitarian law as a major instrument of mitigating the effects of war, and reminding ourselves consistently of the importance of bringing justice and peace together are the only ways by which we here, people of faith, can respond to those skeptics, cynics, and disillusioned who tell us that war is inevitable and that more often than not, might prevails over right. And we've got to say to them, not only in words, but in deeds, that for us it is right that should defeat might. Thank you.
Grazie.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tarek. And best wishes also to Lebanon, because after 2 years of a political vacuum, you're starting all over again. So I really wish you all the best for your wonderful country that indeed is a laboratory for peaceful coexistence. And thank you, because around here, right, in our backyard, well, the first law was Roman law, right? When the Romans, they actually introduced Roman law to avoid slaughtering each other. So thank you. Because the importance of law to show also that war can be prevented. It is not inevitable. And also the relationship between peace and justice. There is no stable peace if it is not just. And in this framework, the upholding of the entire architecture of law that has been so decisive after World War II, well, we have to maintain this building and make sure that this works properly and it is respected always. Thank you. I think there is no need to introduce the following speaker, but I will introduce you anyhow. By the way, he too is a child of St. Francis, by the way, so some kinship, let's say, exists. Cardinal Pierbattista Pizzaballa, he hails from Cologno al Serio, near Bergamo, Lombardy. Archbishop, Cardinal, Franciscan, from the minor Franciscans. He spent most of his life in the Holy Land, and he was ordained in Bologna. So there's another link between us, okay? So I think that this has some importance. Between 2004 and 2016, he studied in Bologna. Between 2004 and 2016, he was a custodian of the Holy Land, and he was in charge of the Christian, let's say, places of worship in Israel, Palestine, Syria, and Jordan. In 2020, he was appointed Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem by Pope Francis, and in 2023, he was made a cardinal, a voice that we heard often, and in the last few years that have been so violent, he gave a voice to the suffering of all in the Holy Land and in Palestine. Thank you. Very gladly we give him the floor. I'm the first before last speaker. We're tired. And I was asking myself, what can I say that other speakers have not mentioned yet? Because they spoke about many things. I imagine, that I will have to focus my comments on the situation I've been living in for more than 35 years. I will not mention, let's say, current affairs. You can watch the news. We are at the beginning of a new phase, as we know. But if we consider the theme that we are here to discuss, a disarmed and disarming peace, in these few minutes I have for my speech, perhaps we can try and understand not only what happened, what is happening, but why, the reasons for this. So the first thing that I would like to share with you is a matter of language, actually. In this last 2 years, there have been appalling clashes also regarding the words to be used. Someone used the word genocides, other people are against this. The United Nations were blocked countless times for a statement, declaration that they made after months. The sticking point was the words that were used once again. So it is a war that was not just waged with weapons, but with words on the media, everywhere. Well, thinking about this language war, this war of words started before October 7th. It erupted, it exploded on October 7th, but it started long before October 7th. In the respective societies, Israeli, Palestinian societies, the other did not exist, right? People were self-referential. In the beginning of the 1990s, when I first arrived in Jerusalem, in election campaigns, one of the main themes of all election campaigns was the Israeli-Palestinian issue. In the last 20 years, during election campaigns, any topic is mentioned except for the Israeli-Palestinian question. It was no longer within the media, social and cultural context, whatever. It was a topic that was not mentioned anymore. Both Israelis and Palestinians would just speak with and within and to their own specific context. And when the other was mentioned, was always in a negative way, with contemptuous, scornful words, words of rejection. With total mutual misunderstanding and lack of comprehension. People spoke against the other. The other was no longer seen. In the book of Isaiah, chapter 47, when Isaiah spoke against Babylon, one of the accusations against Babylon was, you say me and no one else. And now this way of speaking has once again become very current, very common, and with this appalling war, unprecedented in its dimension, visible, the increase, and also there, the other, where you have not seen eyes. So if you have never seen the other, if the other does not exist to you, then everything can happen. The violence of weapons is just a consequence of this. Anything goes. And drones were mentioned, also AI earlier. When we needed to get into Gaza, we were able to get 3 times into Gaza, but you had to go through political coordination, but military coordination. We need to coordinate our actions. We had to lay down in the most minute details where we needed to go, because then they would put the itinerary in the algorithm so that the drone could track you and follow you. If you did not stick to the plan, the drone would shoot you. Behind all this that happened, there was no one really pressing the button. There was an algorithm that made decisions. They decided on the life and death of thousands of people, something that's absolutely appalling. So the first thing I would like to say to you is this. October 7th and the war in Gaza, this basically has exploded in our face, but the early signs were there. Peace, culture. Peace is culture. It's not just a thing. And the culture of the other, of the existence of the other, even based on dialogue. Okay, we do not get along. But in election campaigns, said, I have this idea, people say, you have different views, whatever, but we can agree to disagree. The other was seen, he was there, but he was no longer there. And when the other no longer exists, and if he or she exists, is only depicted not as a human being, people are dehumanized, then the use of weapons in such disproportionate magnitude becomes something that's not morally acceptable, God forbid. But then it is understood and justified, perhaps. Another thing, leadership, I do not want to repeat what people have said. Things need to change, but they never change on their own. You need someone who is bold enough to speak out, to have a vision, to pursue that vision, open new roads. This is not what happened over the last few years. And the current leadership, they cannot build peace. They're too compromised. I have nothing against, I do not want to mention specific names now. Reporters are here. I have to watch what I'm saying and be careful with my words. However, it is clear that if we want to then turn the page, we want to have a new perspective. We need new people who are able to use a new, different language that also considers the failure of what happened in the past. But this is not the case right now. We have spoken at length about the crisis of multilateral bodies. I do not want to repeat what others have said, but what we have perceived and what we perceive right now is not just a crisis of multilateral organizations, but it's also a shift in the center of gravity that's connected to all this. The world is no longer, let's say, monopolar or bipolar. It's multipolar, and these multilateral bodies were established after World War II in mainly a Western context, where now the center of gravity is no longer in the West, or not just in the West. It's not just a matter of geography, it's a matter of culture. Because if you change the way of thinking, the idea of person, of human being, the notion, the idea of rights, and you look at this in Africa, in the West, in Asia, it's not exactly the same, right? It is expressed in different ways. And all this, for sure, plays a role in this. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict, what happened, it is a political conflict, essentially. But it's not just political. it also has religious connotation that cannot be overlooked. And our role as religious leaders comes into play at this point. We are at a time of crisis in interfaith dialogue. And there is a matter of fact that we must consider. In this last couple of years, it was almost impossible to hear local religious leaders who speak differently from their political leaders. Religion, in our context, plays a public role. In Europe now is being confined to the individual personal sphere, not in the Holy Land. It was very, very difficult to hear Muslims, Jews, and Christians are irrelevant, basically, in this debate. They count for nothing. But religious leaders were not capable of saying anything in freedom, detached from the political dynamics in which everyone was sucked into. And this was very painful to see. The dialogue between faiths, well, we have to imply first that faiths do exist. And we should not take this for granted. So interreligious or interfaith dialogue, well, on October 7th and the war in Gaza, this is a threshold. It's a watershed moment. There's a before and an after. Before the war, I said that everything that happened swept away years and years of interfaith dialogue. I do not completely now think in the same way, but it has brought a phase to an end. It brought a phase in interfaith dialogue to an end. We can no longer go back. I'm saying this to the people from Sant'Egidio who dedicate their efforts to this. We cannot speak as if nothing has happened. For 2 years now, we haven't been able to meet, right? We haven't been able to have any public or private, even covert meeting so that no one could see. Well, sorry, privately, covertly we could do that, but publicly we could not do so, and we could not even understand each other. There are people with whom for many, many years we entertained wonderful relations, and now we have no relations with these people. This war is a watershed. It has caused a profound wound in our relations. The hatred that has to. So now is over and done with. Nothing can be as it used to be. We could not just ignore these last 2 years. But it should not even become an excuse for mutual finger pointing or qualms. We have to start from this failure that we have experienced to overcome this, to go beyond, to grow in mutual understanding. And we should bear in mind, I've been thinking about this, why was it impossible for us to understand each other? There are different reasons for this. But one of the reasons was that amongst ourselves, we never spoke about the issues dividing us to then avoid having issues. But then these problems exploded in our face. Relations between Christians and Catholics and Judaism. We have never spoken about the role played by the State of Israel. To us, it is one thing, and to them, it is something different. We never spoke about this. We have been treading very lightly around this topic. And now the criticism against the State of Israel are considered to be criticism against Judaism, because we had never clarified this. We never agreed on the interpretation of the scriptures. We have the same scriptures, but we do not read them in exactly the same way. And this applies to many other things. We have to start afresh, but it will take a long time. But this crisis over the last 2 years, this should prompt us to start again and not just be stopped dead in our tracks, to think about what was missing. We should not just go through a list of things that went wrong and negative things, but we have to make a leap forward, because interreligious dialogue is one of the 2021 points listed in the Trump plan. So if you want to change perspectives, you need to change also the political, but also religious narrative. The role played by the media has been absolutely fundamental, and it is still fundamental. One more thing that I would like to add. My good friend Tarek Mitri spoke at length about justice and peace. And over the last 2 years, I also felt deeply the need to tell the truth. Justice and peace, but also truth. And truth is not a simple thing, really, to pursue. The situation is so polarized, so complex, so intricate. But I'm the pastor of a community, and I cannot talk about academic theories when I speak to my community. I have to become their voice. I have to say something that they feel it is true regarding their lives and their circumstances. Someone said we have to be neutral. And I replied, come with me to Gaza, right? Speak to the Christians who are there being bombarded, and then again tell me whether we must be neutral. It doesn't make any sense. You have to call a spade a spade. But at the same time, this is why using words has been so essential. I do not know how to say this in Italian, actually. Saying the truth without shaming. So saying the truth without humiliating, right? Without also finger pointing, without becoming a part of the conflict, because you have to keep relations together. You have to think about the day after, reconstruction. In the last 2 years, sometimes we couldn't find the right words. But many people would tell me, it is not enough for you to bring me food, even if I need food. What I need is for you to tell me that you love me. I need to understand that you're there for me. Empathy has been a very important point. Being there, being present physically, that was extremely important. But some people would tell me this is going to finish at some point, it's going to end. But then we will remember when this is over who was by our side, being there. So this is for sure not a secondary aspect, presence. It is not enough to send a check and say nice words. It is not enough to send a truck with aid. You have to be there physically. You do not solve problems this way, but you were there, right? In that moment, you were there. When everything was collapsing around you, your house, your work, your schools, when everything is collapsing and crumbling to pieces, what stays and endures are people. That's what stays. And this is something that I found striking over the last few years. So what I have to say, we're talking about disarmed and disarming peace. The arms will always be out there. Weapons are bought because someone wants to buy them. There's a demand for weapons. Since the time of Abel and Cain, inside the heart of man dwells a spirit of claiming your rights and arrogance. So we have to work beforehand. Language, the narrative in schools. In Israeli history textbooks, Palestine is not there. In Palestinian geography textbooks, the map of Israel is not there. So if you want to disarm, if you want a disarming peace and a disarmed peace, that's where you have to begin, because that's where then thoughts are formed. And this is where the words basically are formed that in the future will be used and can become weapons. They become arms if they are the wrong words. We are at the beginning of a new phase that needs to be built from scratch. And perhaps it is even harder, I hope, I hope that war is over. We do not know yet whether it is actually over. I hope so. I hope the emergency, let's say, phase, the most acute phase is over. Talking to our Christian brothers and sisters in Gaza, this is what I understood immediately. Until the emergency was happening, you lived on a day-by-day basis. Every day was an emergency, and you need to deal with that. The bombs are silent for the time being. Well, the bombs are there, but no more carpet bombings. So the emergency is over. And people have now emerged from their shelters and the holes in the ground where they found shelter, and they emerged from there, and there's nothing. So the rebuilding of Gaza, I'm saying this to Mr. Landini, who is an expert in work and in labor, that's big money that's involved, right? This will be a wonderful pie, and the 99% will not get hold of any piece of this pie, I can tell you. We'll need to rebuild. This will take years. And in the meantime, where will these people go? Where will they live? This is the third year in Gaza without schools. There are no hospitals. Cardinal Zuppi take on the task of rebuilding a hospital. And that will not be easy. But rebuilding from the human devastation, the human wreckage, rubble that this war caused will require massive amounts of energy. People are scared. They said, well, they were in an emergency. They could not see. Now they're seeing that in front of them there's nothing. And being present will be even more important, because the media quite soon will stop talking about Gaza. So people will no longer see Gaza, right? The focus will shift elsewhere. But then people will be there, 2 million people without a job, without a house, without hospitals, without schools, without anything. They have nothing. So being there, being present will become even more necessary. Because what is happening in the Holy Land, in Gaza, in the West Bank, and so on. West Bank is another major issue. And this is, I believe, very symbolic. It is the epitome, the symbol of the crisis that happens globally, which there becomes a very deep wound. So being present there, healing those wounds, means really paying attention to what happens in the world, because we live in a microcosm. And this will be my last comment. I do not want to repeat things that were already said earlier. Political and religious institutions have shown their utter failure. National, multilateral institutions, even religious institutions, were not able to provide any guidance in this tragedy. However, I noticed the vitality of grassroots, civil institutions, locally, organizations, movements, volunteers, everything that's part of civil organizations, cross-platform, Israeli, Jewish, Muslim, Christian, they worked. If not everybody starved in Gaza, well, that was because these third sector institutions, the United Nations, could not operate there. They were able anyhow, even paying a very huge price. They were able to break this siege. They were present, and they were able to bring the little that was necessary with their presence, but also with their hard work. I met dozens and dozens of young people, Israeli youngsters, 18-year-olds, who decided that instead of taking up arms to shoot at people, they said, I will go to jail. I will go to jail. because if you do not abide by the obligation for military conscription, you end up in jail. They were isolated from their families and their world, but they said, I do not want to take part in all this. Israelis, Palestinians, I repeat once again, who were able to get organized, to join forces, to be present there where the institutions could not go. So this is my hope. I hope that this world, let's say these civil organizations, and I hope that they will become the political leaders of the next generations, and they're the ones who will be able to turn the page, not the current generation. They might be able to bring a new language and new prospects in this sea of hatred, of violence, and rejection and contempt in which this war has plunged us into and that has exploded in our face. Not everything is lost. Not all is lost, because some people are keeping this wish alive. And until these people are around, it will be possible to rebuild something. Rebuilding, well, it won't be Blair and Jared Kushner who will basically rebuild Gaza. And you know what I'm talking about, right? The volunteers will rebuild. Those who locally getting their hands dirty, they will be able to put themselves on the line and rebuild that fabric, that civil and human fabric that this war has destroyed. Thank you.
Grazie anche ovviamente di questa ecco, grazie.
Thank you very much for your words, and thank you especially for all these tragic years that you have told us about, and your presence there. You were a focal point there. Your parish priest in Gaza, he was called every night by Pope Francis, and he called him before opening the Holy Door. And thank you very much, because you were a focal point for hiding, facing the problems, not hiding them, not putting them on the rug, but focusing on such important issues as peace, justice, and truth. You always added, and the role of religions and the culture of the other, and this holds true not just in the Holy Land but throughout the world. Not being neutral, the words as weapons, the failure but also the role that religion can and must have. And now there is just a void there, a vacuum, and and solidarity, we know, is not linked to, should not be linked to the emergency, but solidarity should become more visible now, and we must face that vacuum that is there now, and all that entails, and all that it entails. Thank you very much, Pier Battista. Now I would like to end up with Mr. Tutsarit, chairperson of the Jamarang Buddhist Association of Cambodia, a Buddhist monk from Cambodia or Kampuchea, and we must, of course, we must remember the suffering of that country. He was responsible for the French pagoda of Bernier, and now he is the chairperson of the Buddhist Association that in October 1986, that's as far back as our mutual knowledge goes to. In 1986, 40 years ago next year, he took part in Assisi in the first historical inter-religious meeting convened by Saint John Paul II. He is one of the promoters of the Mission Cambodgienne pour la Paix, and he played an important role in the peace process in this country. Thank you very much, sir. You have the floor. Eminence, Excellencies, brothers and sisters. I come from Cambodia, which is a small country, small nation, but we can testify to a lot of suffering. We have been through a lot, and it is worth noting that Cambodia, through Indonesia and France, who presided over the Paris Agreement, well, these two countries have put an end to the war, to the conflict in Kampuchea many years ago after the foreign. And let us not forget the Khmer Rouge. Ours is a country that shares the river Mekong with Tibet, China, Burma, Thailand, Laos, and Vietnam. But in Phnom Penh, the capital of Kampuchea, we have 4 branches of the Mekong River: the Upper Mekong, the Lower Mekong, the Basap and the Tulasap. And the Basap is the freshwater, and Kamlak as well. Now, I would like to talk for the time that has been allotted to me, because ours is not a big country in terms of population size, for instance, with respect to Indonesia. We have 8 Cambodians in this room here. Please rise. 8 people have come from Cambodia and are sitting now here. And Cambodia is a francophone country, but young people speak French less and less nowadays, and they speak Japanese, Korean, Chinese, Thai, and especially they speak English. France has lost ground in Kampuchea. And thank you very much. And now I would like to talk to you about the situation in Kampuchea, but on behalf of the Buddhist community of Cambodia, Tamarang Say, I have the honor to express my gratitude to the Sant'Egidio community that invited us to these days of prayer for peace, called Daring Daring Peace, to be held here in Rome on October 26, 28, Rome, the capital of Italy. And the inhabitants of Rome, the people of Rome, are very generous and very nice and very peaceful. I love this city that has a 3,000-year-long history, and I will be eternally loyal to the Sant'Egidio community. In 1986, I was in Assisi, as Cardinal Zuppi said, and it was very cold, and I saw the Pope, the Dalai Lama, the Anglican Archbishop of Canterbury, and in 1987, I had the immense honor to be received in a papal audience by Pope John Paul II. And in my life, during my existence, I met him 3 times in Assisi first, then during the hearing in Vatican State, and then during a prayer for peace in Cambodia, under the direction of Monsignor Paglia, Monsignor Vincenzo Paglia. Now I'll always be loyal to the Sant'Egidio community. And it is a privilege for me to participate with the several people from Cambodia who come here to this important meeting for peace in the world. I rejoice to the fact that the community, the Sant'Egidio community, has given me the opportunity to take part in this round table and to say to the world that peace peace is to be promoted anywhere on the planet, because we do not want war. The unprecedented prayer of the Cambodian people is mightier than the bombs from Thailand. In the whole of Cambodia, and especially in all major cities, men, women, monks of every age have taken to the streets nearly daily in the last couple of months to pray, so that the voice of peace can be heard and listened to. We say to the world, we're saying with a loud voice to the world, that Cambodia needs peace. We know the pain of war. Thousands of families are leaving their homes. Children cannot go to school. Our people cannot hide, do not hide from the storms, they hide from bullets. This is a war that is killing people. And I would like to make an appeal to the whole world to exert pressure on the government and the army of Thailand. I lived 4 years in Thailand, and I know many monks there, many faithful there, and they're all very nice people. But recently, Thailand bombed a pagoda. And also Pasat Pray, that is part of that is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And now, in the Nanchang region that I visited in 1986, there's barbed wire everywhere. And the two peoples need to exist. A problem. Christian and Muslim existence works pretty well. We don't have any problems in Cambodia. We live together. We live together in peace, like brothers and sisters. And from now on, we need to ensure coexistence between Cambodians and Thais. Thailand is a big country with 71 million people, while Cambodia is a country of 17 million people. It is a developing country. We don't have a military force that can compare with the Thai army, and we pray a lot. But prayers do bear fruits. In Kuala Lumpur, we have received very good news from Kuala Lumpur a few days ago. Cambodia and Thailand are signing an agreement. A while ago, it used to be called a ceasefire. I don't know what this agreement is about now, but I got a phone call and a couple of days ago, and I received this important information and received good news. We support Cambodia. We need unity, and I hope the world will support Cambodia to defend peace. It's true that it's not easy for the country, for the people whose countries are at war. It's not easy, also because war is a source of deaths, famine, poverty. And the English say that when poverty knocks at your door, happiness leaves through the window. And the same thing, when war reaches your border, peace is turned off in paradise. Now, I would like to tell you a true story concerning a 6-year-old child called Fa. This young boy is a dual national. His mother is Cambodian and his father is Thai. His family used to live in Phnom Penh, the capital of Cambodia. They would travel very often between Phnom Penh and Bangkok. But starting last summer, his family situation has changed, and they cannot live in peace and harmony anymore like they used to do before, because of the conflict at the border between the two countries. Fa, the young boy, thus sent out an appeal in 2 languages, in Khmer and Thai, for an appeal for reconciliation between Thais and Cambodians. And he said, we are bordering countries, and we must love each other as much as we can. just like my father and my mother love each other. I think this is not a bad idea, because in order to heal the wounds, we need to reconcile Cambodians and Thais. And I would like to add that in Cambodia we have a saying that runs: the branches climb towards the pumpkin, and the pumpkin towards the branches. Now, if Thailand and Cambodia were to help one another, were to stretch out a hand towards one another, the border conflicts can be, I believe, can be resolved peacefully. In Buddha's times, there's another story here, in the Roveni River. So while Buddha was alive, an armed conflict emerged between the Sakyas and the Kolyas. There were populations living in the area for the control of the water of the river Heroini, that was the border between the two countries. During the dry season, the local people didn't have water for their fields, and thanks to the mediation of the Buddha, the water problem was resolved through two questions. First question put by Buddha: what's more expensive, water or blood? It's an easy question, and to that we must say that water is less costly. And if the water is less costly, then Buddha asked the second question. The second question was as follows: then why are you shedding blood to take water? Why are you doing the swap? And the message was very clear: you have to share the water. And both West and South, East and West, we need to share water. And if you share water, peace can reign in the region. And the same applies today. And now I would like to express a wish. I hope that all people will be free from hostility, free from wars. I hope everybody will live in joy and security, and hope that all human beings that are suffering now in the world, in Sahel, in Ukraine, and throughout the world, that all human beings can live in peace and safety and in happiness. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Sam.
Grazie.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Sarit. Well, daring peace, I believe, requires persistence, steadfastness, never giving up. And in these 40 years of participation and joint efforts here in Sant'Egidio is a proof of this. Thank you. Thank you for the contribution coming from this small country that has been deeply affected by war, that we all carry in our hearts and that we do not want to forget. Sometimes, we shine a spotlight on a country, then it's turned off, but even if the spotlight is turned off, the country still suffers and still lives on. So we carry Cambodia in our hearts. We said that we would finish at 12:15. We have received a few questions. Some have been addressed to specific panelists. Others, instead, we won't be able to take them. The first question, well, they're not really addressed to someone specifically, but one is about, well, it's addressed to Tarek Mitri and Cardinal Pizzaballa. Very quickly, lightning fast. I will start ringing the bell even before you start speaking, so super duper fast. So how can we, this is a question from Andrew from Russia. How can you talk with governments who do not accept international law? How can you also talk to terrorists?
Non lo so. Facciamo il contrario, dai, comincia il cardinale.
Okay, the cardinal will go first. First of all, no one is an island. So you can always talk to everyone. You can talk to governments, organizations. No one can think that they can solve things on their own or live in isolation. So when you want to, you can find the tools to engage, let's say, and when necessary, to impose, but anyhow, to determine specific choices, because no one is an island. Right now, with Hamas, if there is a negotiation in place, it means that someone is talking. Otherwise, there would be no negotiation. So first of all, the clear targets need to be identified. They have to be lofty. They have to be serious. They have to be ambitious, and then establish all the conditions that can be introduced at all levels, so that the warring parties, the fighters, can sit together and then basically be reasonable and engage in dialogue. Tarek.
I think there is a similarity between talking to a government that doesn't believe in international law and talking to terrorists. And the only way because both believe in the use of force as a solution to problems, and both have a pessimistic view of human nature. And I think human beings, if they go to deep into their hearts, do not see their interest in peace. So talking to them should be that of convincing them that their use of force, an excessive use of force, doesn't work, that it leads them to a deadlock. And I have many stories to tell you about terrorist groups I met when I was in Libya. Not that I convinced them, but the realities have convinced them that there is a dead end down the road.
Grazie. Grazie.
Thank you, Tarek. There are questions that I'm asking Donia to take necessarily. So basically, it is an assist to her. So the question is the following. The question is from Andrea Cosentino. We have 124 trillion, I don't know if dollars or euros, in our financial market, and just $40 billion, I guess, for you. So are you? Well, question is earlier, and I think that funding peace is something that is fundamental, and we do not speak enough about this. And this funding cannot just be provided by individual states. Yesterday I was reading an interview. Bill Gates actually was being interviewed by a reporter, and he was underlining how private funding is decreasing. So, and businesses and private entities have to be involved in this. They must be integrated in the political debate. They must be empowered. Their commitment should not just be, let's say, rewarded with tax breaks. Their, let's say, CEOs must have a stake in this. We have seen that states can backtrack. Cambodia, for instance, received funding from international organizations. So this should be organized in a more effective way than it has been organized until now. Thank you for being lightning fast. This is to Maurizio Landini from Barbara Castelli. And she's saying, thank you wholeheartedly. One of the great powers for change is expressed to voting. How can we change this would require another conference altogether. How can we counter the all-pervasive absenteeism and low voter turnout? So the power is in the pencil that we hold in the voting booth. So how can we change this? How many hours do I have to answer this question? So if people no longer go to the polls, so most of them do not go to the poll, and abstention is prevailing, is because there is a distance that has formed. They do not feel represented. I believe that we have to go back to listen to these people and deal with their problems directly and make sure that their, let's say, representation is built on kitchen table issues, the problems people face. And I think that at the same time, we need also election laws that help people to make decisions and that are not confusing. The fact that over time, election laws developed whereby the relationship between elected representatives and their voters is broken, I believe that this is not helpful at all. I believe that these are the basic issues that need to be addressed. And I'm saying this because if you actually look at what's going on, there is something that clearly emerges. Those who do not go to the polls are those who are worse off, not those who are better off. So this is the theme once again. We have to go back and deal with the issues, the real issues that people face, and also rebuilding places where people are allowed to participate and not just go to the polls every now and then. And I would like to make an example, and it has struck me, and this will be my last comment. As you know, recently we promoted a referendum. It did not reach a quorum. However, that referendum, well, young people participated. It was the only category that actually exceeded the minimum legal number. The quorum were young people when I went and looked at those who went to the polls. And more than 5 million out of 9 million youngsters between 8 and 34 went to the polls. If it had been for them, only the quorum would have been reached. And some people said, I haven't gone to the polls for years. I will go to the polls. And they were motivated by the fact that say we're going back to the polls to vote for something and not someone. And I believe that that reply is quite revealing. I think that we need to rebuild this, let's say, sense of engaging in politics, something that's useful for people to solve the problems they have. I believe that this is the road ahead. It's not easy, for sure. That's the. Thank you. Very concise reply. Unfortunately, there were more questions. There were one more for Cardinal Pizzaballa, but this one I will assign to Cardinal Fridolin Dambongo. Rather than peace without justice, I think that there is no peace without forgiveness. This is from Gianni Petiti. So there can be no peace without forgiveness, albeit respecting truth. Is there some room for this kind of work between Christians and faithful from other religions? So a relationship between peace and forgiveness. Cardinal Fridolin Ambongo.
Effectivement, il n'y a pas de paix.
Actually, there can be no peace without forgiveness, but there can be no forgiveness without truth, and that is why, in our context, and in the Great Lakes sub-region, we think that if we really want peace, a durable and lasting peace in our sub-region, we must sit around the table, and this is the meaning of our social pact for peace in the Democratic Republic of Congo and in the region of the Great Lakes. So, meeting together and telling us truth, telling us one another truth, because there are truths that our politicians are hiding from us, because they meet in Paris, they meet in Doha in order to sign agreements, but the people are not informed about what they're doing there. And so it's okay to sign an agreement, but it's as though we are applying, it's as if we're dressing an open wound, or we're putting a plaster on an open wound without stitching it. So that's why we want to sit around the table, first of all, to clarify the things that divide us amongst us Congo people, Congolese, and then between Congo and the neighboring countries. And then maybe we'll be able to talk about reconciliation that can lead to proper peace. But before that, we need to have truth. Again, for Cardinal Pizzaballa, there's another question, something that in the last few months and years has involved all of us. The question comes from Noemi Neltora, and it's on the Gaza Parish Church that took care of the disabled people and the elderly people. Can you tell us a bit more about what it meant and what are the conditions of those people now? Pizzaballa. Yeah, within the compound of the parish church, there's of course the church, then the house of the priests, the house of the Sisters of Mother Teresa, where there were about 60 disabled people before the war, and some elderly people have been abandoned by their relatives. And then there's a church, one of the 4 Catholic churches in Gaza, that has become a shelter for a bit less than 500 people now, around 500, a bit less. And we have 3 Mother Teresa sisters, 3 sisters of the Word Incarnate, and 3 priests of the Word Incarnate. So they all lived there, and some of them died for lack of medical assistance. They needed medicinal drugs that were not available anymore, and that's why they died. Then there's 40 of them. Then another 20 died by following bombing or following shooting from precision shooters. Others died from lack of medical assistance because there are no hospitals and there is no oncological treatment, cancer treatment available anymore. Those who have cancer have nothing. There is no treatment available. This is the situation now that we have witnessed over the past couple of years, and part the house of the nuns of Mother Teresa was destroyed by the bombings of during the first year. We managed to put it together again, but this is the situation in which they live in now. And they are there. They're still there, all of them. Disabled people are all Muslim by religion. We don't know where their families are. They're all been displaced. And I'll wrap up because I know we reached the end of the allotted time. A couple of months ago, when the final operation, operation began, I called everyone, nuns and priests, brothers and sisters, and I tell them we're not able to ensure safety, and whatever you choose, I'll do it. And the Mother Teresa nuns and the others said, well, the elderly people and the people who are sick cannot leave. If they leave, they die, and if they stay here, we'll stay here. We just can't let them. Resistance. Well, the rest took a decision without them, so they made this meeting, and in person, usually they would talk on the phone, and they felt the need to write a letter, and to sign that letter, all of them, and so they said, if they stay, we'll stay, and they are still there. We don't know what's going to happen. This is still a big question mark, but we're going to stay there. We'll stay there. We'll never give in, and whatever we'll be able to do, we'll do it. Over the past 2 years, the parish church was a hub. For about 10,000 families in the neighborhood, and we would bring provisions there, and then all the families would then prepare smaller portions. We were given lists by the welfare department, and then the aid was meted out to the local families, and the atmosphere of solidarity was really moving. There were people that would never meet with one another before the war, and the war made them meet with one another. And during the last couple of years, there was a lot of solidarity. The war has unleashed a lot of hatred, but has also unleashed a lot of solidarity. Thank you. Thank you very much, really. And this is the way to use peace. You stay and use peace. We would like to ask you to make a phone call on behalf of 100 people. Please make a phone call to the parish church in Gaza and tell them we love them very much. And then, as you said before, the hospital and the thing, they said letter, and so they died. He said, this is not acceptable. And so they died. It is not acceptable. They died because the treatment was not available anymore. This is something we cannot accept. This, of course, all depends on the war. And I'll just wrap up, and I'll say that I would like to conclude with a Mr. Albert Camus. Some of us might remember him. 70 years ago, he said, and this applies to all. This is the basis of humanity. Every generation believes itself to be bound to redo the world, fated to redo the world. My generation knows it won't redo the world, but we have a bigger task. We need to make sure that the world does not destroy itself. Let's use peace.